In the year 2147, humanity had reached far beyond Earth. Stars that once twinkled in the night sky were now destinations. Planets orbiting distant suns became homes for settlers seeking new lives. One such place was New Haven, a colony nestled around a dim red star at the edge of explored space. It wasn't glamorous or rich, but it was alive with people building something from nothing. Families worked together to grow food under artificial lights. Engineers kept machines running despite limited resources, and teachers shaped young minds eager to learn about the universe. But peace didn't last forever. A disaster struck without warning. A massive solar flare erupted from the nearby star, frying electronics and knocking out power grids across the colony. The protective shields meant to guard against such events failed, leaving thousands exposed to radiation and extreme temperatures. Crops died, water purification systems shut down, and communication with Earth went silent. Panic spread as survivors scrambled to find shelter and supplies. Desperation set in quickly when they realized help wouldn't come unless they asked for it. The distress signal sent from New Haven traveled through the cold emptiness of space, reaching Earth weeks later. Captain Daniel Hayes was the first to hear it aboard the USF Guardian, one of humanity's most advanced ships. He sat in his chair on the bridge, staring at the blinking alert on his console. The message was fragmented, filled with static, but clear enough. Helpless, attacked, dying. Those words hit him like a punch to the gut. No matter what else was going on, he knew this was urgent. Hayes called his senior officers to the briefing room. Lieutenant Grace Miller, calm and sharp-minded, arrived first. Chief Engineer Ryan Carter followed, wiping grease off his hands. Laura Bennett, the communications officer, came last, clutching a tablet with more data on the transmission. Hayes stood at the head of the table, his face serious. "We've got a problem," he said simply. "New Haven is in trouble. They're asking for help." The team listened intently as Hayes laid out the plan. Earth's government had already approved sending a rescue convoy. The Guardian would lead 2 other ships, the Horizon and the Pathfinder, to deliver medical supplies, engineers, and fresh food. Their mission was straightforward: save as many lives as possible and stabilize the colony until reinforcements could arrive. Everyone nodded, understanding the stakes. This wasn't just another routine trip. It was a lifeline for people who had nowhere else to turn. As the convoy prepared to leave, Hayes walked the halls of the Guardian, checking on his crew. He stopped by the engine room, where Carter was supervising final adjustments. "How's she looking?" Hayes asked. Carter grinned. "Like a dream, Captain. She'll get us there fast." Hayes smiled back, but felt a weight pressing on his chest. Something about this mission felt off, though he couldn't put his finger on why. Grace joined him on the bridge as they broke free of Earth's orbit. Outside the windows, stars stretched endlessly into the blackness. "You think we'll make it in time?" she asked softly. Hayes glanced at her. "We have to," he replied. "If we don't, no one will." For days, the convoy sailed through the quiet vastness of space. Crew members went about their duties, keeping everything running smoothly. But tension lingered beneath the surface. Each jump through hyperspace brought them closer to New Haven, and whatever awaited them there. Little did they know, danger was already lurking in the darkness, watching and waiting for its chance to strike. The convoy sailed smoothly for weeks, the hum of engines filling the silence of space. The Guardian led the way, its sleek frame cutting through the void with precision. Behind it, the Horizon and the Pathfinder followed closely, their lights glowing faintly against the endless blackness. Captain Daniel Hayes stood on the bridge, his eyes fixed on the navigation screen. They were close now, only a few days away from New Haven. The crew worked tirelessly, checking systems and preparing for the rescue mission ahead. Everyone felt the weight of responsibility pressing down on them. Lives depended on their success, but something wasn't right. Lieutenant Grace Miller had been monitoring the sensors nonstop, her sharp gaze flicking between screens. She noticed small anomalies: tiny blips that didn't match any known celestial objects. At first, she dismissed them as debris or sensor errors, but as the blips grew more frequent, her unease deepened. "Captain," she said finally, turning to Hayes, "we've got something out there. Multiple contacts, moving fast." Hayes frowned. "Are they asteroids?" he asked, stepping closer to her station. "No," Grace replied firmly. "They're too organized. And they're closing in." Before anyone could react, alarms blared across the bridge. Red warning lights flashed as the unidentified ships emerged from behind a nearby asteroid belt. There were 5 of them, sleek and menacing, their surfaces reflecting no light. They moved with unnatural speed, surrounding the convoy in seconds. Hayes barked orders, his voice steady despite the rising tension. "Raise shields. All hands to battle stations." The alien ships opened fire without warning. Bright beams of energy lanced through space, striking the Pathfinder first. The smaller ship buckled under the assault, its hull tearing apart like paper. Explosions lit up the darkness as debris scattered in all directions. The Pathfinder was gone in moments, leaving nothing but floating wreckage and a cloud of dust. "Pathfinder is down," Laura Bennett shouted from her station, her voice trembling. "Horizon reports heavy damage. They're pulling back." Hayes clenched his fists, his jaw tightening. "Keep us steady," he ordered. "Return fire." The Guardians' weapons roared to life, sending bursts of plasma toward the attackers. Chief Ryan Carter worked furiously in the engine room, rerouting power to keep the shields intact. "We can't take much more of this," he yelled over the comms. "Shields are at 60%. The Horizon limped away, trying desperately to escape the ambush. Its engines sputtered as it fled into the distance, leaving the Guardian alone against the enemy. The alien ships swarmed around them, relentless and precise. Each shot hammered the Guardian's defenses, pushing the crew to their limits. On the bridge, Grace monitored the chaos, her fingers flying over the controls. "Captain, we've lost weapons on the port side. Hull breaches on decks 3 and 4. Hayes gritted his teeth. "Seal off those sections. Get med teams ready." He turned to Laura. "Can you hail them? Maybe they'll talk." Laura shook her head. No response. "They're not interested in talking." The attack continued without mercy. The Guardian's crew fought back valiantly, but the odds were stacked against them. Explosions rocked the ship, throwing people off their feet. Smoke filled the corridors as fires broke out in damaged areas. Despite the chaos, Hayes remained calm, issuing commands with clarity. "Laura, send a distress signal to Earth. Tell them exactly what happened here. And make sure they know this was an unprovoked attack." Laura nodded, her hands shaking as she typed out the message. "Signal sent, Captain." As the battle raged on, Hayes realized they couldn't win, not against such overwhelming force. His priority shifted from fighting to surviving. "Grace, plot a course out of here. Full burn. We need to regroup and warn Earth." Grace hesitated. "What about the Horizon?" "They're on their own," Hayes said grimly. "We can't save them if we don't save ourselves." With one last burst of energy, the Guardian broke free from the alien ships, its engines blazing as it sped into the void. Behind them, the attackers lingered near the wreckage of the convoy, watching silently as their prey escaped. For now, the fight was over, but the war was just beginning. The Guardian limped through space, its battered frame a testament to the brutal ambush. Smoke still lingered in some corridors, and the hum of the engines was uneven, struggling under the strain of damage. Captain Daniel Hayes stood on the bridge, his face drawn with exhaustion. The crew worked tirelessly to keep the ship running, but the mood was grim. They had lost 2 ships, the Pathfinder destroyed outright, and the Horizon barely escaping with its life. The weight of those losses hung over everyone like a shadow. Hayes looked at Lieutenant Grace Miller, who sat at her station, her fingers moving quickly over the controls. "How bad is it?" he asked. "Bad," she replied without looking up. "Shields are offline, And we got hull breaches on multiple decks. Chief Carter says the reactor is stable. For now. But we're running on borrowed time. Hayes nodded, his jaw tightening. He turned to Laura Bennett, who was monitoring communications. Did Earth get our message? Laura nodded, though her expression was tense. They confirmed receipt. Command said they're analyzing the data we sent. But she hesitated, glancing up at Hayes. They want more details. Casualty numbers, enemy tactics, anything we can give them. Hayes sighed, rubbing his temples. Tell them we'll send what we can as soon as we stabilize. He paused, then added, and tell them this wasn't just an attack. This was a declaration of war. The bridge fell silent after that. Everyone knew what Hayes meant. The Krylos, assuming that was who they were dealing with, had struck first, targeting a rescue mission. It wasn't random or accidental. They had chosen their moment carefully, hitting where humanity was most vulnerable. And now, Earth would have no choice but to respond. Back on Earth, the news spread quickly. President Samuel Brooks called an emergency meeting of the Global Council, gathering leaders from every nation to discuss the situation. The council chamber buzzed with tension as holographic displays showed footage of the attack. Ships exploding, debris floating in space, and the desperate faces of survivors aboard the Guardian filled the screens. The images left no room for doubt. Humanity had been attacked. This changes everything, Admiral Jonathan Reed said, standing at the front of the room. His voice was firm, commanding attention. We've known about the Krylos for years, but we never thought they'd act so aggressively. This wasn't just an assault, it was a challenge. They want to see how we'll react. President Brooks leaned forward, his expression grave. And how should we react? Do we retaliate? Mobilize? Or do we try diplomacy? The room erupted into debate. Some argue for caution, urging patience while they gathered more information. Others demanded immediate action, calling for a full-scale military response. Public opinion, however, left little room for hesitation. News of the attack had reached every corner of the planet, sparking outrage. Protests erupted in major cities, with crowds chanting for justice. Social media was flooded with calls to defend humanity's honor. In the end, the decision was unanimous. Earth would go to war. Admiral Reed took charge of the preparations, overseeing the mobilization of Earth's fleets. Shipyards worked around the clock, constructing new vessels equipped with advanced weapons. Recruitment centers overflowed with volunteers eager to join the fight. Soldiers trained day and night, preparing for the battles ahead. Among them were Private Ethan Cole, a young man driven by anger over the loss of innocent lives, and Medic Samantha Lane, who saw the war as a chance to make a difference. As Earth prepared for conflict, Hayes and his crew continued their journey home. The Guardian was slow, its damaged systems forcing them to take a longer route. Hayes spent hours alone in his quarters, staring at the stars outside his window. He thought about the people they had lost, the brave men and women who had given everything to save others. He thought about the families back on Earth, waiting anxiously for news. And he thought about the Krylos, their motives still unclear. When the Guardian finally reached Earth's orbit, Hayes felt a mix of relief and dread. Relief because they were safe, and dread because he knew what came next. War was coming, and there was no turning back. The Guardian docked at Earth's largest orbital station, a massive structure known as Haven 1. Its arrival was met with silence. Crew members disembarked slowly, their faces pale and weary. Captain Daniel Hayes stepped off the ship last, his boots echoing on the metal floor. Reporters and officials crowded around, but he pushed past them without a word. His mind was focused on one thing, getting answers. Inside Haven 1's command center, Admiral Jonathan Reed waited. The room buzzed with activity as technicians analyzed data from the Guardian sensors. Screens displayed fragments of the battle, flashes of light, explosions, and the sleek shapes of alien ships. Reed stood at the front, arms crossed, his expression unreadable. When Hayes entered, the Admiral nodded toward a chair. "Sit," he said simply. Hayes sat down, his body heavy with fatigue. "We did what we could," he began, his voice low. "But they hit us hard. We lost good people." Reed leaned forward, his eyes sharp. "Tell me about them. The attackers. What did they look like? How did they fight?" Hayes described the ambush in detail, recounting every moment. He spoke of the alien ship's speed, their precision, and their overwhelming firepower. Lieutenant Grace Miller added her observations, pointing to sensor readings that showed energy signatures unlike anything humanity had encountered before. Chief Ryan Carter chimed in too, explaining how the alien weapons had bypassed the Guardians' defenses with terrifying efficiency. As the debriefing continued, Laura Bennett approached with new information. "Sir," she said, addressing both Hayes and Reed, "I intercepted something during the attack. It was faint, but it sounded like communication." Reed's brow furrowed. "From the attackers?" "Yes," Laura replied. "I've been working on translating it. It's not complete yet, but I think they call themselves the Krylos." The room fell silent. Everyone knew the name. The Krylos were a species humanity had detected years ago, but never engaged directly. They were expansionists, known for colonizing planets and wiping out native populations. Until now, they had kept their distance from Earth, but this attack proved they saw humanity as a threat, or an opportunity. Days passed as Earth prepared for war. Meanwhile, the Guardian remained in orbit, its crew repairing the damage while gathering more intelligence. Grace spent hours analyzing debris collected from the battle. She discovered traces of advanced technology embedded in fragments of the alien ships. "This stuff is way beyond us," she told Hayes, holding up a shard of metallic material. "If we can figure out how it works, it might give us an edge." At the same time, Laura worked tirelessly to decode the intercepted transmission. Progress was slow, but eventually she pieced together enough to understand the basics. The message revealed that the Krylos believed New Haven belonged to them. They accused humanity of trespassing and claimed the convoy's presence was an act of aggression. When Hayes heard this, he shook his head in disbelief. "They're lying," he said firmly. "New Haven was settled years ago. There was no sign of anyone else there until now." Grace agreed. "It doesn't matter if they believe it or not. This was planned. They wanted to provoke us." The final piece of the puzzle came when another Krylos ship appeared near the Guardian. It didn't attack. It hovered silently, broadcasting a signal. Laura scrambled to interpret it, her fingers flying over the controls. After hours of effort, she managed to establish basic communication. A distorted voice crackled through the speakers, speaking broken English. "You invade our space," the voice said. "You bring death. Leave or face destruction." Hayes stared at the screen showing the Krylos ship. "We weren't invading," he replied calmly. "We were trying to save lives. You attacked a rescue mission." There was a long pause before the voice responded. "Rescue. Lies. Humans always lie." The transmission ended abruptly, leaving the bridge in silence. Hayes looked at his crew, frustration burning in his chest. The Krylos weren't interested in explanations. To them, humanity was an enemy, and they were ready to fight. Admiral Reed received the transcript of the exchange and immediately shared it with Earth's leaders. The message was clear. Diplomacy wouldn't work. Humanity's only option was to prepare for war and hope they could survive it. Earth moved quickly to prepare for war. Shipyards across the globe worked nonstop, their massive doors opening and closing as new vessels took shape. The air was filled with the sound of grinding metal and hissing welders. Workers labored around the clock, their faces streaked with sweat and dirt. Every ship built was bigger, faster, and more powerful than before. Engineers studied fragments of Krylos technology recovered from the Guardian's mission, using what they learned to upgrade weapons and defenses. Humanity's fleet grew stronger by the day. Admiral Jonathan Reed stood at the heart of it all, overseeing operations from Earth's central command center. Maps of nearby star systems covered the walls, marked with routes and potential battle zones. Reed paced back and forth, barking orders and checking progress. His voice carried authority, driving people to work harder. "We don't have time to waste," he said repeatedly. "Every second counts." Soldiers trained relentlessly in preparation for deployment. Training grounds buzzed with activity as recruits drilled under the harsh glare of artificial lights. Private Ethan Cole pushed himself to his limits, running obstacle courses and practicing combat drills until his muscles ached. He thought about the convoy that had been destroyed, the men and women who hadn't made it home, and vowed not to let their sacrifice be in vain. Nearby, medic Samantha Lane practiced treating injuries in simulated battlefield conditions. She stayed calm under pressure, her hands steady as she patched up mock wounds. Both knew the stakes. This wasn't just a fight, it was survival. As fleets assembled in orbit, humanity braced itself for the largest military operation in its history. Dozens of ships gathered at strategic points, forming task forces ready to strike. The USF Invincible, Earth's newest flagship, served as the command hub. Its bridge was alive with activity, officers coordinating movements and planning strategies. Admiral Reed boarded the Invincible personally, determined to lead the charge against the Krylos. Captain Daniel Hayes and his crew prepared to join the effort. Repairs on the Guardian were nearly complete, and though the ship still bore scars from the ambush, it was battle-ready once again. Hayes spent hours studying maps and battle plans, memorizing every detail. Lieutenant Grace Miller tested the upgraded systems, ensuring everything functioned perfectly. Chief Ryan Carter inspected the engines, making sure they wouldn't fail mid-mission. Laura Bennett monitored communications, staying alert for any sign of the enemy. Public support for the war was overwhelming. News outlets broadcast updates daily, showing footage of ships being built and soldiers training. Families sent messages of encouragement to loved ones heading into battle. Flags waved in city squares, and rallies drew crowds chanting slogans like "Protect our future" and "No retreat." Even those who had opposed conflict before now stood united. Humanity had no choice but to fight, and everyone understood that. The final stage of preparation came when intelligence revealed the location of a Krylos stronghold near New Haven. It was a heavily fortified outpost, serving as a staging ground for attacks on human settlements. Admiral Reed decided to hit it first, aiming to weaken the enemy's grip on the region. Operation Redemption was born, a bold plan to retake New Haven and establish a foothold in Krylos-controlled space. On the eve of the mission, Hayes gathered his crew on the Guardian's bridge. "This is it," he said, his voice steady but firm. "Tomorrow, we go to war. We'll face enemies stronger and faster than us, but we have something they don't. Each other. Stick together, follow orders, and remember why we're here. For Earth, for the fallen, and for the future." The room was silent as his words sank in. Everyone felt the weight of what lay ahead, but there was no fear, only determination. They had trained for this moment, and they were ready. As the fleet launched into hyperspace, Earth watched anxiously, holding its breath. The journey would take days, but when it ended, humanity would strike back. The Krylos had started this war, but humanity intended to finish it. The fleet emerged from hyperspace near New Haven, its arrival announced by the hum of engines and the glow of ship lights cutting through the darkness. Admiral Jonathan Reed stood on the bridge of the USF Invincible, his eyes fixed on the tactical display. Dozens of ships surrounded him, their positions precise and ready. The Guardian, now repaired and upgraded, took its place in formation alongside other vessels. Captain Daniel Hayes watched silently as the Krylos outpost came into view, a massive structure floating in orbit above New Haven, bristling with weapons. Enemy forces detected. Lieutenant Grace Miller reported from the Guardian's sensor station. "They're moving to intercept." Reed's voice crackled over the comms. "All units, hold position. Wait for my signal." The battle began moments later. Krylos ships surged forward, sleek and fast, firing beams of energy that lit up space like lightning. Earth's fleet responded immediately, unleashing salvos of plasma torpedoes and laser fire. Explosions erupted across the void as ships clashed, their movements swift and chaotic. The Guardian rocked violently as enemy shots struck its shields, forcing Chief Ryan Carter to reroute power to keep them intact. "Shields at 50%. Carter shouted from the engineering deck. "We can't take much more." Hayes clenched his jaw. "Evasive maneuvers. Keep us in the fight." On the Invincible, Reed directed the fleet with precision. He split the enemy forces, ordering smaller groups of ships to flank the Krylos while the main force held the line. Private Ethan Cole, stationed aboard one of the flanking ships, gripped his weapon tightly as he waited for orders. His heart pounded as explosions flashed outside the viewport. When the call came to board a damaged Krylos vessel, he moved without hesitation, leading his squad through the airlock. Inside the alien ship, chaos reigned. Strange corridors glowed faintly with an eerie blue light, and the air smelled metallic. Cole's team advanced cautiously, encountering resistance almost immediately. Krylos soldiers, tall and insect-like, fired bursts of energy from weapons built into their arms. Cole ducked behind cover, returning fire with steady aim. Beside him, medic Samantha Lane patched up a wounded soldier, her hands moving quickly despite the danger. Back in space, the battle raged on. The Guardian struggled under heavy fire, its systems pushed to the limit. Laura Bennett monitored communications, relaying updates to the crew. "Captain, we've lost contact with 2 ships," she said grimly. "Their engines failed. They're drifting." Hayes nodded, his expression hard. "Focus on what we can control. Target their command ship. If we take it out, they'll lose coordination." Grace adjusted the sensors, pinpointing the command ship's location. It hung at the center of the battlefield, directing attacks with cold efficiency. Hayes made a decision. "Full burn," he ordered. "Straight for their command ship. We'll draw their fire." The Guardian surged forward, dodging enemy shots as it closed the distance. Chief Carter worked furiously to keep the engines running, sweat pouring down his face. "This is insane," he yelled. "But I think we can do it." The Guardian unleashed everything it had, targeting the command ship's engines. Explosions tore through the alien vessel, crippling its ability to maneuver. As the command ship faltered, the Krylos fleet began to scatter, their attacks losing focus. Reed seized the opportunity, ordering a full assault. Earth's ships pressed forward, overwhelming the enemy with sheer numbers and determination. By the time the dust settled, the Krylos outpost was in ruins, its defenses shattered. The human fleet had won, but at a cost. Ships drifted lifelessly in space, their crews lost. Wounded soldiers filled medical bays, and the faces of survivors were marked by exhaustion and grief. Still, the victory was undeniable. Admiral Reed addressed the fleet over the comms. "Today, we showed them who we are. This is our first step toward reclaiming what's ours. Stay sharp. There's more to come." As the Guardian limped back into formation, Hayes looked out at the wreckage. They had struck a blow against the Krylos, but he knew this was only the beginning. The war was far from over. The victory at New Haven gave humanity hope, but Captain Daniel Hayes knew it wasn't enough. The Krylos still held the advantage. Better technology, more resources, and a deeper understanding of space warfare. Earth's forces had won a battle, but they were far from winning the war. To turn the tide, they needed information, something that could give them an edge. Hayes volunteered for the mission. The plan was risky. A small team would infiltrate a Krylos outpost, disguised as prisoners of war. Their goal: gather intelligence on enemy operations and uncover any weaknesses. Hayes led the group, accompanied by Lieutenant Grace Miller, Chief Ryan Carter, and a squad of Marines. They boarded a captured Krylos shuttle, its alien design unfamiliar and unsettling. The shuttle's interior hummed with strange energy, and the air smelled sharp and metallic. As they approached the outpost, tension filled the cabin. Hayes reviewed the plan one last time. "Stay calm," he said firmly. "Stick to the story. If anyone asks, we're survivors from the convoy they attacked. We don't know anything about Earth's fleet." Grace adjusted her helmet, checking the disguise one final time. "The translation software is ready," she said. "But if they ask too many questions, we'll improvise," Hayes interrupted. "We've done harder things." The shuttle docked without incident. Krylos soldiers swarmed aboard, their insect-like bodies towering over the humans. They barked orders in harsh tones, herding the team into holding cells deep within the outpost. The cells were cold and dimly lit, their walls pulsing faintly with alien energy. Despite the discomfort, Hayes felt a flicker of relief. They were inside. For days, the team played their roles, acting like broken survivors. They shared false stories about the convoy, careful not to reveal anything useful. Meanwhile, Grace worked quietly, hacking into the outpost's systems using portable devices hidden in their gear. She uncovered files detailing troop movements, supply routes, and even plans for future attacks. But something else caught her attention, a document describing the ambush on the rescue convoy. Hayes read the file carefully, his jaw tightening with each word. The attack hadn't been random or accidental. It had been deliberate, designed to provoke humanity into war. The Krylos government wanted Earth to retaliate so they could justify expanding their territory. "They used us," Hayes muttered angrily. "They made sure we'd fight back." Grace nodded grimly. "We need to get this data back to Earth. If people see this, it'll change everything." The team prepared to escape, knowing they couldn't stay much longer without raising suspicion. Chief Carter studied the outpost's layout, identifying weak points in the structure. "There's a maintenance tunnel near our cell," he whispered during a quiet moment. "If we can disable the guards, we can slip out unnoticed." The breakout happened quickly. Using makeshift weapons smuggled into the cell, the team overpowered the guards during a routine check. They moved fast, sticking to shadows as alarms blared behind them. The outpost erupted into chaos as Krylos soldiers scrambled to hunt them down. Hayes led the way, his mind focused on reaching the shuttle. Reaching the hangar, they found their path blocked by a squad of Krylos soldiers. Gunfire erupted, lighting up the dark corridor. Private Ethan Cole, part of the Marine squad, took point, firing steadily to cover the others. Samantha Lane stayed close, treating wounds as they advanced. One by one, the team fought their way through, inching closer to freedom. Finally, they reached the shuttle. Carter frantically worked the controls, bypassing security locks while Hayes kept watch. Shots hit the hull, denting the metal, but the engines roared to life just in time. The shuttle launched, shaking violently as it broke free of the outpost's gravity. Behind them, explosions tore through the structure, collapsing sections of the facility. Back aboard the Guardian, Hayes uploaded the stolen data to Admiral Reed. The evidence was damning, proof that the Krylos had planned the entire conflict. Humanity now knew the truth. This war wasn't just about survival. It was about justice. The stolen data from the Krylos outpost spread quickly across Earth's military networks. Admiral Jonathan Reed reviewed the files in silence, his face hardening with each revelation. The Krylos had deliberately provoked humanity, using the convoy attack as a way to justify their aggression. It was cold, calculated, and devastatingly effective. But now, humanity had proof, and a chance to strike back with purpose. Reed called an emergency meeting with his top commanders, including Captain Daniel Hayes. "This changes everything," Reed said, pacing the room. "We know why they attacked us. Now we need to hit them where it hurts, their homeworld." The Krylos homeworld was heavily fortified, surrounded by layers of orbital defenses and satellites designed to destroy any invading force. Breaking through would be nearly impossible, but Reed had a plan. Operation Redemption would evolve into Operation Final Stand, a massive assault aimed at crippling the Krylos' ability to wage war. The goal was simple: disable the satellites, land ground forces on the planet, and neutralize key targets. Preparations began immediately. Engineers worked around the clock to outfit ships with experimental weapons reverse-engineered from Krylos technology. Soldiers trained harder than ever, running simulations of urban combat and orbital drops. Private Ethan Cole drilled tirelessly, his determination fueled by the knowledge that this mission might decide the war's outcome. Medic Samantha Lane practiced field medicine under extreme conditions, knowing she'd need every skill to keep people alive. When the fleet launched, it was the largest armada humanity had ever assembled. Dozens of ships filled space, their lights glowing like a constellation against the blackness. The Guardian took its place among them, its crew ready for the fight of their lives. Hayes stood on the bridge, watching the fleet move as one. "This is it," he said quietly. "No turning back." The battle began as soon as they entered Krylos territory. Enemy ships swarmed toward them, firing relentlessly. Explosions lit up the void as Earth's fleet pushed forward, shields holding firm despite heavy fire. Lieutenant Grace Miller monitored the chaos, her voice steady as she relayed updates. "Satellite network ahead," she reported. "Weapons locked on target." Chief Ryan Carter worked frantically in the engine room, rerouting power to keep the ship running. "Hold together," he muttered to himself, sweat dripping from his brow. "Just hold together." The Guardian unleashed everything it had, targeting the orbital defenses. Chief Carter made a critical decision, sacrificing himself to overload the ship's reactor and create a massive energy pulse. The blast disabled the satellite network, opening a path for the ground forces. As the ship shuddered violently, Carter gave a final nod to Hayes over the comms. "It's done, Captain." On the surface, Cole and Lane fought alongside other soldiers, battling Krylos troops in ruined cities. The air was thick with smoke and the sound of gunfire. Cole moved with precision, taking out enemies while protecting his team. Lane stayed close, treating wounds and keeping morale high. Together, they pushed deeper into enemy territory, reaching key installations and destroying them one by one. As the satellites fell and ground forces secured their objectives, the Krylos leadership crumbled. Their defenses were shattered, their armies in disarray. With no other choice, they surrendered unconditionally. Humanity had won. Back aboard the Guardian, Hayes reflected on the cost of victory. So many lives had been lost, and the scars of war would linger for generations. But for now, there was peace. Earth had proven it could stand against even the greatest threats. Hayes looked out at the stars, vowing never to forget what had been sacrificed to reach this moment.